you truly believe you're the best at the job and you are.
Who we select as president doesn't matter.
Tenacity, the most important characteristics of a real estate agent.
Realty Talk Podcast, your favorite podcast on the planet.
If you do not have that, it's going to be really difficult for you to be successful in this type of an industry.
Welcome back, Realty Talk Podcast, your favorite podcast on the planet, on the world, in the universe, all things real estate. To my right, we have the queen of the closing table, Susan Mancini. We've done a few podcasts lately.
We have, yeah.
And I feel like we need somebody like a Bruce Buffer to do our introductions.
Okay, are you going to be that guy?
No,
like,
I
are
can't
you
do
trying
it.
to channel that right now? Is that
No.
where we were going? Okay.
I can't do it. But what I'm really excited about today is that we won't have any airplane noise.
Oh, yeah. That kind of, it ruined the vibe a little, but
Yeah.
it kind of also fit the vibe. So
Yes.
I think it's okay. Today it's quiet.
Yes. And we have a great guest we're really excited to talk about. Get the whole life story. We'll dive into it. Cierra DeVille, but now known as Cierra
Sloan.
DeVille
Well,
Sloan.
DeVille Sloan.
You're right.
DeVille
I'm
Sloan.
keeping the last name. It's too good to drop,
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is.
So
You have
recent-
like taglines with it when you say, like when you're like DeVille, Sierra like Sierra Nevada, DeVille like Cruella DeVille. Like
I just had a doctor's appointment this morning, and she's like, "Has anyone told you how great your name is?" And I had to be like, "But I'm kind of dropping it, but I'm still keeping it."
yeah,
So,
yeah.
So married recently,
married recently. Yeah.
hence
July.
the name change.
Yeah. Cierra
congrats.
DeVille Sloan.
Yeah,
It's weird.
congratulations.
yeah.
Well, let's dive right in. So, where are you at? Who are you? What do you do? Tell us about yourself. We already know.
Yeah.
Our listeners do not know.
I know. Well, I feel like there's a lot more to me than meets the eye, but I'm in real estate. I have a team of about 8 individuals, which is really awesome because I think real estate can get really lonely. And so having like a culture and people to depend on and talk to makes it not feel so lonely. Because at the end of the day, you're your own boss. So, but I worked at Zillow for 5 years, which led me to get into real estate.
Why is that?
Well, I'm very, very thankful for that experience there because I think everyone should have some corporate experience. I think it's actually lacking in individuals in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
Because I think if you run your business like you're working for someone, then you are held accountable and you start getting structure under you, even if you're your own boss. But working at Zillow taught me a lot. And it actually made me believe in myself because I started selling for the first time and seeing results and winning and, climbing the corporate ladder and getting promoted. I'm like, wow, maybe I'm kind of good at this thing. So it made me confident to get into business myself.
What years were you at Zillow?
2011 to 2018.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. So it was a
Maybe
good ride.
2012,
I
yeah.
mean,
It was 5-6
post
years.
2009, values are going up. Single family was a good place to be at that time.
Yeah, and selling advertising for Zillow and networking and traveling the country with real estate agents to top brokerages, top teams, top events. I've seen it all.
And how did that shape you? Because you had that experience where you spoke with a lot of agents and worked with a lot of agents, saw kind of what they did well, what they didn't do well. How did that shape you in real estate and, potentially lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think I started wanting more of my own control over my life where, working for someone else, you don't have that as much. And so seeing that I was meeting with other agents that, in a humble way, I thought I could do a better job than them in real estate, and seeing like the freedom and money they were making, I was like, why am I not doing this for myself? But I also was humbled when I got into real estate. When I worked at Zillow, I was like, what are these agents doing? Like, just answer their phone, just do this, just do that. Like, it's so easy. Why aren't they doing it? And then I got into real estate and I realized actually this job is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Being commission only it requires a strong, positive mindset.
Yeah.
Structure, self-discipline. Like, it requires a whole lot more than I ever thought.
And I can attest to why agents don't answer their phones. What you don't realize is once you start closing transactions, it's like every single person in the world starts calling you to sell you, like ADP all the
Security.
time. Like secure. I'm like, I don't need home security right now. I didn't buy the home. Like it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you get blown up. So I feel for some of the agents that I judged that I was like, why can't you just answer every single phone call that comes in?
Because now my job is to put myself out there everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I need everyone to know that I'm in real estate. If you're looking to buy or sell, call Cierra DeVille or CDRE Group. So now anyone has access to your information, and even people you don't want, because I've had scam callers call me. One pretending to be a sheriff with a warrant out for my arrest.
Oh yeah,
So there's like weird things that happen.
Did you fall for it?
I almost did.
Yeah, it was close.
Because in my head, I'm like, well, I'll drive to the sheriff's station. Like, I don't have any problem clearing my name. And my uncle is a sheriff. And I said, you know what? Can I call my uncle real quick? And he, made up some spiel. We got disconnected. Called my uncle right away. He's like, scam. No way we'd be doing this. I'm like, okay. But yeah, so, and that was the one time I'm like, I'm going to answer this call because I never do. And I don't know this number. And that's what ends up happening. So it's really difficult to answer calls.
So when did you get your license?
2018. So I was still working at Zillow when I got it because I was preparing an exit.
Yeah.
So I actually started doing transactions while I was at Zillow part-time and getting a feel for it.
And how soon after getting your license did you do your first deal? Did you close your first deal?
Pretty quickly. I think I got it December and closed in April. The first transaction while I was at Zillow, and then a second one while I was at Zillow, and then I left and then closed an $8 million sale for my third.
Nice.
And how did you get that $8 million?
A Zillow lead.
There you go.
Everything I was preaching at Zillow, I went and did on my third sale, and I was like, okay, like this works. Yeah,
that's awesome. Very cool. So fast forward to where you're at today. In your real estate career, what is? I know you mentioned you have a team. You're representing buyers and sellers. Walk us through like a typical day and a typical year for you and your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a mix of people on the team. That they don't have kids or family, so they're a lot more in the mix with real estate. Some have to balance being a wife, mother. But I think first and foremost, I like to work out in the morning. I think that sets your mind right for the day and also wakes you up a bit. And then my approach is either, every day is different. It just depends what you're working with, how many escrows you have. We actually have 5 open escrows right now.
Nice.
That we're working with. And then, what needs to be done, signs made, inspections, meeting appraisers, appointments, showings, or your office hours following up with all the leads from open houses, working on marketing material for the coming soon, getting contracts out. So it's just a mix of what your day would look like, but among some of those items, depending on what transactions you're working on at any given time.
So in 2024, how many deals will you or your team, I guess both, will they represent buyers or sellers on? Yeah,
we're already paced for 20 that will close out by the end of this October, by the end of this month. So I think we will be probably around 25 to 30 by end of year with an average purchase price of about 1.8 million.
It's awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all over the map, right? Like you'll do something that's a small condo and then you'll sell a mid-century in the Hollywood Hills for $3-4 million.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I also learned when I was coaching agents at Zillow is they would get a Zillow lead and it'd be for a mobile home and they would drop the ball. And one time I had an agent that was in like Tennessee or Kentucky and she goes, but I helped that lead and then I ended up closing a $700,000 lead. So in my mind, I always knew that was possible. Mm-hmm. And we've had that where we helped, a mother get into a 55 plus community, elderly community for $350,000 and the son referred us to his cousin and sister for $2 million a pop. Just by helping people. So I do not discriminate on any leads. I mean, everyone wants high-end leads, obviously, but it's all about building relationships and thinking about it from a long-term perspective.
Yeah, I think that's probably a trap that not just real estate professionals fall into, but just everyone in business. You chase this kind of unicorn deal, when in reality, if you focus on your process and work on volume, and you provide a really good level of service, then the big deals come. But you got to build that foundation, and it is truly just a relationship business. So if one party has a great experience with you, they're going to tell friends and family about it, right?
100%. I always talk about the at-bats with my team. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to get up to bat. Like, if you're never going to hit a home run if you don't get to bat. And some of those small deals put you in orbit to those things so much, where I've had agents struggling. Like, sometimes they get so trapped behind their computer and they're like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, get outside, get in orbit. Like, so for example, I'm like, if you don't have an open house to host, go to the open houses. And we just had an agent on the team go to an open house this past weekend and run into a neighbor that's looking to sell.
Beautiful.
And I've done that too. I've actually gone to an open house, attending it, running into a neighbor looking at it that is going through a divorce, and looked at his home after the open house. He invited us into his home.
It's awesome.
So I think it's just like, you have to get yourself out there in orbit where buyers and sellers are at. Well, where's a better place to find buyers and sellers than an open house?
Yeah.
Even if I'm not hosting it, I'm going to go look at it,
Yep.
and I might bump into some opportunities.
You
or
never
neighbors.
know. Yeah.
So transitioning, I have some questions just about, kind of your background and what keeps you going. So I know at some point in the conversation, we'll ask about some real estate stories, but, personal stories. But looking back at your career, what's like the craziest transaction you've been a part of, or the best transaction? What's a story that you could share with listeners that would be kind of eye-opening?
So, I mean, the best one was definitely like the $8 million sale, my third transaction.
You were the listing agent?
No, I was representing them to buy it.
Oh, wow.
I happened to be a part
Canyon.
of that transaction.
Nice.
In Shady Canyon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was building rapport. Somehow I found out he knew someone I knew just through motocross and...
Yeah, what you
motorcycles.
don't know about Cierra is that you give her like one piece of information about yourself, and then she somehow knows everything. Like it's a joke. Like, she's that person that friends joke about. Like, you tell your friends that you're dating a new guy, and then this friend, like, she's the one that's going to find out all the information about him. Like, it is deep dive detective status with
You can call me
Cierra.
a know-it-all. I like to know it all in a good way, but I really do.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't know something, I really like to find it out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had a relationship through motocross, and he was like, how do you know I ride? Like, how do you know I write about motorcycles? I got this information because his email was Ducati Dad. And I was like, oh, so do you ride, motorcycles? And he was like, well, why? And I'm like, well, your email is Ducati. And he goes, well, how did you know that's a motorcycle? And I literally opened up into growing up riding dirt bikes and people we knew, and somehow made a common ground on our first call, which ended up setting up the tone for closing like 6 months later.
Wow. It's exciting.
I know. So that's probably the best, but
Worst.
Not every.
What's the worst?
Yeah. Not every real estate transaction is beautiful, and sometimes even sad. So the worst one ever that I would say like took a toll on us and my team was we had a client that we helped. They were divorced, but they had a few assets together. They were cordial. And we sold one of the assets for them. And then about a month later, we got a call from the ex-wife saying we might need to sell another one of theirs because so-and-so committed suicide.
The spouse?
Yeah, but they were separated.
Got it. Oh, yeah, the ex-spouse.
Yeah, so ex-spouse. And so we actually had to go over to the house to take a look at it and saw, where it happened. And it was an emotional toll, not to mention that, two of his kids were still living in the house. They were in their 30s.
Oh, wow.
But sitting and having to hear
How
their
everything-
experience and how they found him. And my agent that I was with left crying.
Yeah.
It was just such a heavy weight and burden, and to try and be there to save the day for something that's, what are you going to do? There's at that point, there's nothing I could say, there's nothing I could do that would make this situation good at all.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the craziest and saddest situation I've been a part of.
Well, I think that's awful that happened. And I think it brings us to something that we speak about a lot, because I think, there's a common misconception, especially when you say I sell $1.8 million, my average sales price is $1.8 million. There's already kind of this common misconception of what real estate is.
Yes.
Especially we are here in Orange County, so we get it all the time. And I think, that is not the norm. What you see on TV is not the norm. We are like crying with clients.
Yeah.
We're holding hands. We're their therapist. I mean, we're really, very involved in tough situations.
And I think it's a little biased to say that bad things don't happen in nice homes either, because this home was like a $2 million house.
Yeah.
Just because it's, a nice mansion does not mean that there aren't terrible things that happen in those price points too. I mean, I've definitely seen my fair share of like feces and other things at other homes and hoarder homes
in million
dollar homes too.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't discriminate against the rich either.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recently did a deal in Newport Beach that we purchased for $3.3 million in heavy distress.
Yeah.
So you think, okay, this is like a marquee property. The first time we saw it, we walked in, I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't want to share any more details than that. But I think real estate as a whole, I gave kind of a funny statement on a panel a long time ago, but I said, I think people are going to live on the earth for at least another 100 years. When they live on the earth, they're going to live in houses. And they're going to probably want those houses to be nice.
Yeah.
And so I think our industry as a whole is pretty safe. But that being said, like life is really complicated and crazy shit happens to people. And a lot of times that's at the house, right? And so, one statement you made, which I probably disagree with, is that you said you couldn't do anything to make it better in that moment. Yeah. I think what we can do as real estate professionals is do our job really, really well.
Yeah.
Because in that moment of crisis for that family, you're right, we're not psychologists, but and so we can't like cure the actual event from happening. Right. But what we can do is make the real estate transaction so smooth and simple that that's not something they have to worry about or consider. And that allows them time to go and heal and move on to the next stage, which, you guys both said in different words, but I think that's obviously something that your team does very, very well. So,
I think it was like the impact that we actually were the ones she called after that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm like, whoa, like they called us after this just happened to their family for us to come in. And we sat with her and her kids for like an hour, just like talking through it all. Options, if this makes sense. I mean, she was leaving it up to her kids. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to hold on to this or do you want to get rid of it? Like, what do you want to do? And so you're right. Like, there is something to be there. And it's really, I think, being there and showing them the path of their options.
Yeah. And then
guiding them. Yeah.
And making that not the problem.
Right.
Making it a seamless transaction and as easy for them as possible.
And that's also why I left Zillow and got into real estate, and honestly continued that message that I don't think real estate needs to be this difficult. So many clients are like overwhelmed by the process. And even when you open an escrow, you've got the lender, the title, the escrow, the agents, all messaging these clients like boom, boom, boom. You need to do this. You need to do that. It's like, whoa, like let's make it a little easier on them.
Yeah.
So a few other questions that we want to get to, so we'll keep it moving. But I'm super curious. So we're, kind of starting the fourth quarter in 24. Rates have come back down a little bit. Give us your perspective on what you think the next 3, 6, 12 months look like with single-family real estate transactions in Southern California tied to the political environment that we're in. So we're in an election year.
Yeah.
We're watching these nasty debates take place. Country feels awfully divided. What's your perspective?
So I would say that we've seen this on many election cycles where a lot of buyers and sellers take pause. That's not everyone, right? I think if you have to buy or sell, you're going to do it if you have the means to do it. But I think even with interest rates going down, there's still a huge pool of buyers that will not be entering the market for a while. I think with the increase of interest rates for the last 2 years, plus the economy and the inflation that's occurred, I think it's that families have to make, $12,000 more a year just to live the way they were 2 years ago. And so that extra $12,000 that they could have saved or put towards, down payment they're just more so struggling to get by. So even though interest rates have gone down, I think there's a big buyer pool that won't be entering back into the market, especially until after the election, to see maybe what kind of economic changes will occur depending on who gets in office.
I do feel like the closer we're getting to the election, the more we're hearing. Because, I mean, we talked about it a few months ago. Election year, does it really impact? Stats say no, that people are still going to move forward and still buy. But I do feel like as you get dangerously close, like 5 weeks out or, that now it's a little more top of mind and it plays a little bit of a role. But ultimately, I think that, election or not, I think what you're talking about is what's been happening the past few years and that, people, that the affordability just isn't there for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think we've continued to have increase of values of homes. Like, even though it's slowed down and it's not 30-40% like we saw during the pandemic, it's still increasing. I just looked up a stat in Santa Monica. It increased 13% in the last year in Santa Monica. So, it's still increasing in quality areas, in areas that are in high demand. Those are increasing in value even faster. But overall, it's just trickled up, I would say, the state of California. And so with that, even though interest rates have gone down, like pricing is still more than it was a year ago, and people couldn't afford it a year ago. So I think it's going to cause just, more normalization of the market, because we're a little jaded in what we've seen the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I've had this talk with my team. I'm like, 60 days on market, that's kind of normal. Like that's
it's actually good, right?
Yeah.
So like historically over 50 years, you would say anything under 90 is still a seller's, seller's market. But I mean, I kind of feel like what you're saying is that affordability is the actual problem, not necessarily supply or demand. It's really, can somebody afford to get into this house? So if Trump wins, does it get more affordable? If Kamala wins, does it get more affordable? And who Kamala.
Tomato.
Just for clarity, I don't like either candidate.
Yeah,
that's why I don't know how to pronounce their names. But give us your opinion.
Can't mess up Donald Trump.
The Donald?
The Donald.
Yeah. Donnie? Uncle Donnie?
Yeah. I mean, hey, he's a pretty big real estate mogul. So if we're talking real estate here, he wouldn't be the worst for the real estate industry. And I do think that, obviously it's very divided. There's people on both sides, and I see why people don't like both candidates. Yeah. And I can see why people like both candidates. In my personal opinion, I think if Donald Trump gets in office, there will be way more confidence in the economy. And, we've talked about this, but I think anything the government gets hyper involved in, they don't do a good job at. And an easy way to look at that is the post office and the DMV. And so I think there's something to be said about Donald Trump wanting to give it more back to the people that actually know what they're doing, industry people that know the market, that know real estate, that know building and development, versus some politician in the White House that's just going to issue these, red tape on things that really actually don't know the building process well. So in my opinion, I think that'll turn investors into the market. I think it'll put more money in real estate.
So the counter argument to that is that if there are investors entering the market faster, I'm an investor, right? So if more investors are entering the market, hypothetically, right, or the theory would be that there's more volatility with single family pricing, which would make it less affordable for an actual end consumer. So what do you think about that? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think the other end is if you can bring America to be more energy dependent, then the cost of everything will go down. All of the building supplies, everything the investor's using to build a home goes down. Plus, the economy trickles up with more jobs. So now you have the American citizens making more money to afford the lower cost home that now investors could build.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredibly complicated subject.
I'm definitely not a pro. This is just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. I mean, what I usually consolidate down to, and I know we're running short on time, but is that I generally feel that people in the market that can buy today are just a little lazy, and they're not purchasing, not because they don't have the capacity to get it done. It's because they are, kind of, I would say, distracted. They're not out creating value and really focused on the dream of home ownership, right? And to me, that's why I'm so disenfranchised with both parties. Neither one of these people is inspiring to me. And really, I feel like to be frank, like you look back at 70 years, there's a really strong argument that real estate shouldn't have volatility. It should just be kind of vanilla. Like we should see small ebbs and flows over 7-year cycles. And the volatility we have experienced has been really bad for the industry
the government got involved.
Yeah,
I think they've been involved, though,
well, yes, they have.
Ever.
But I mean, think about, the last crash. A lot of people blamed the lenders, and there was poor lending out there.
No, there was.
But I know there was. But a lot of it was because the government agreed to back those loans. And so that's when it came crumbling, because the government had to then back all these loans. And that's the American people's money. So
it was because actually I would see people like take whiteout on someone's W-2 and like edit it and then put it, or like write down on a piece of paper, this client makes $100,000 a year. Like it was, I think
bad
a lot has changed, thankfully. But I will say there are regulations now to prevent that did come from that.
Correct.
So, there's a little bit of that give and take of like, you do need some sort of guidelines here. Like it can't be a free-for-all.
Well, so. I think that the lenders were doing that because the government came in and said, don't worry. Give anyone you want a loan because we'll back it. So you had bad lenders going, I'll give a loan because Mr.
Getting purchased the next day,
I don't know. A lot of those loans didn't come. Like there were specific, like the stated income loans that's where the majority of that was happening, and that
I'm
wasn't
not against
necessarily coming from
removing all regulation. I just think that there's times where the government gets too involved and they don't really know what they're doing, and I think they make it more difficult for business to operate. And if you don't have business operating, then you're not going to have jobs for people.
That actually reminds me of when so I met with a bunch of the California legislators, and we sat down, and it was a similar setup to this, but everyone's talking, we're sharing information about how the red tape is affecting our business. And, I'm sitting there while there's all of these companies like pleading with them to pass laws or to get rid of some of these regulations, where one of them was it was like the self-driving, but the trucks, like the big long haul trucks, self-driving, and they're like, we would love to be able to operate in California, but you have made it so difficult for us. Like we're in Arizona, So I think we see it a lot more, even locally here. But I think it's a good example of a little too much.
At the end of the day, what's amazing about America is everyone hates this two-party system, but it actually keeps us relatively balanced, because if it swings one way and swings back the other, it actually kind of hopefully allows us to meet in the middle somewhere to keep going strongly. I think we're a lot confused right now. But I mean, for hundreds of years, that's kind of how it's been working, where if it goes too far one way for too long, it gets out of hand.
Except for with the Supreme Court, where like they just have to die eventually. Like that's
like every politician.
That's
now.
where I like can't get on board with the system.
I think we could use a refreshment, some term limits and refreshing faces to some of these people that are making a decision.
Anyway.
And, I think for the first time, too, you have a lot of young people involved in politics for the first time, which is good, and people paying attention. And even more so, if you go back to, like, social media, I've had so many young people buy homes. And so many people are like, where are these young people getting this money from? Yeah. But these young people are actually monopolizing social media platforms. Yeah. And then they're also re-educating people to talk, because if they're getting into home buying and their taxes and having money at a young age, they're actually much more involved in politics.
Well, and I actually was thinking about that when you were talking about, the way people are working these days and how they're not as excited. The dream isn't to buy a home anymore. I mean, with social media, the dream is to travel the world.
Right.
It's true.
So, but there are some people that are making great money traveling the world. So, there's that.
And they're having kids.
But they don't
want to
buy a house. So they want to travel.
Well, because I feel like a lot of kids don't, they want to travel and then they think, okay, once I get married and have kids, then the house matters.
Yeah.
Where back in the day it was get married, have kids, then you buy your house like right away.
Yeah.
And then you figure out your career and make money.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I feel like
Tough crowd.
if I was put into a position of office, I would eliminate social media the year of an election, and
give us some peace.
Yeah, and I would just inspire people to focus on creating value, and things would be okay. But that's an oversimplification.
You would for sure not get elected.
Never.
With that.
I can't.
It's like social media is
motto.
gone.
Zero interest.
Vote for me.
Yeah.
As much as I hate it too, because we've talked about me loving being private. And I have it because of work and having to, let people know who they're working with. I love the privacy. At the same time, I have to say that I love it for the fact that I have control over the information I take in now. And it's not controlled by 3 major companies that have all the control over what information we receive. Even to the extent of changing how we educate ourselves when it comes to college education.
Yeah.
I mean, just having the internet changes the way people can become an entrepreneur and learn about buying real estate or wealth or investment or taxes. Like, you have access to information. You don't have to go to the library anymore.
That's my point, is that, if you control the use of social media, I mean, I wouldn't actually delete it. What I would do is change the way that people see comments, because that's where the negativity occurs. I mean, all of us have this little phone, right? Mm-hmm. I argue that this thing is creating the best time to be alive in the history of humanity in the United States, because if you have drive and you have capacity, you can go and do anything.
Right.
I mean, you can learn how to do any of the things we just talked about in 30 minutes on your phone. Yeah. But that is my issue, is that people are more interested in reading the comments and like engaging in arguments versus actually taking in the information and going and doing something about it.
Right. I agree.
And that's just an inspiration issue. Like they just don't, But anyways.
Do you think that will always be an issue though?
No, I mean, I think that there's a lot of statistics. We probably don't have time to get into all of it, but there's a really good book. I think it's The Unintentional Superpower by Peter Zahan, and he talks a lot about how GDP is driven and how economics work at a global stage. Generally, the consumers of products and services control a market. Mm-hmm. And if you look at just our population demographics, the United States as a whole has more consumption, with people, younger than baby boomers than any other country on the planet. And so whether we're divided or not, we still consume more than anybody else.
Much, yeah.
And that consumption is going to drive the economy. We just need some leadership that kind of guides the decisions with all of that consumption.
Do you think that would be, because I think that's like a lot of young people, right?
Sure.
Wouldn't that be more so like parents?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's the part that media doesn't do a very good job of during an election year. The reality is, who we select as president doesn't matter.
No.
It's really more your local government. So the people that we're putting into position at a local level are the ones that actually make a change in our communities. And when we make a change in the community, younger generations, act differently, they learn differently, and it really casts a broader net. Mm-hmm. This one person that we say is going to make all the decisions for the country is like, it's really a talking head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Jordan Peterson makes a comment where before you go out and conquer the world, make sure your own bed's made or make sure your own house is taken care of. And I think there's some truth. It's like, focus on what you can actually control on your day to day. Like, does President Trump have effect of you being a good husband? No. So like, you have a lot more control over your life than that president sitting head. And make sure your stuff's together before you go out trying to, change the world, I think is a really good motto.
Okay, this is a perfect segue into another question I have for you. So getting away from politics, what is your superpower? What is empowering you to be so successful in your career in real estate? I mean, you you finish college, you go and work in a corporate world. You say, I want to take kind of my power back, whether that's financially or time. What has allowed you to be so successful in this industry that has been tumultuous?
Yeah, I think number one is confidence, because I think you have to believe in yourself, where I don't know everything. There's so much I don't know, but I'm confident that I'll find it out. And once I know it.
Me too, Detective Cierra.
Yeah. And once I know it, I'll implement it, which then comes my tenacity. So I think that's, I didn't always know I could sell. I did have some natural talents of that, like confidence and tenacity. But I didn't have.
What's an example of that? Yeah, I feel like you have something in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so my first sales job was working at Zillow, but before that, I hustled selling shots at USC games.
So you always knew you could sell.
Yeah. So I just wasn't afraid of asking for business. My dad taught me at a young age, go ask someone. And so a few girlfriends of mine, we'd make these pre-made shots and we'd go tailgating at the USC games and we'd sell them for $5 a pop, walk away with $300 for the day, have a blast doing it, go into the game after. And that was, I think, honestly, my dad was very proud of that moment.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't even old enough to drink at the time when I was
illegal,
doing it.
but
It was very illegal.
Yeah.
So my first legal sales job is Zillow.
That's amazing.
And even going into that, it's I grew up dirt bike riding, and I always be with a bunch of guys and only girl dirt bike riding. And there was a pro rider, a trailer or two over from us, and everyone's like, oh, David Villeman's next door. And my dad's like, go ask for his goggles to everyone. And all the guys were like, oh, no, we don't want to bother him. I'm like, I'll go do it. And so I went and knocked on his trailer and asked for his goggles and ended up getting a signed jersey from him.
So also your door knocking skills started pretty young as well.
At a young age.
Awesome.
So I don't know. I just never was afraid to just go after what I wanted. And if someone said no, I didn't take it personal and I moved along,
I can say, I've met a lot of real estate agents in my career, and what I do, I talk to them every day, and I do feel that tenacity is one of the most important characteristics of a real estate agent. If you do not have that, and if you're, not really going after it, it's going to be really difficult for you to be successful in this type of an industry.
And I would say a lot of that, I learned at Zillow when I first started in sales. I was like, hello, this is Cierra. Do you want to click? I was so nice almost, and I had to demand a little bit of attention and respect. And I think that is tenacity, really going after it and wanting it so much that people can hear the conviction from you. I always say, no one wants it as much as you anyways. So,
right.
You have to be the one that really, really wants it. If you want it, you have to go after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you mentioned it too, but, tenacity focused in the right area, right? You had a vision of what you wanted to create, and, it's always no if you don't ask.
Right.
Right? So, there's a lot to learn from a no. And you implement that, and you just kind of keep scaling.
Oh, there's been times where I've flopped on my face on things that I've said, or I'm like, well, that didn't come out right. But then you just move on, you know, you could, and I do kick myself. I'm over processor. I will process that situation too much. Suzanne knows, she goes, you're going to be talking about this for a while. But that's how I learn. And then I better myself the next time, So it's not about being perfect, but I also genuinely believe, and I talk to people about this on my team, if you truly believe you're the best at the job and you are good and you lead with great character and moral ethics and you really believe that you are providing that great service, you should be confident in that. I genuinely believe that when people work with me, I mean so well. I want the best for them. So why would that be a bad thing? Why would I be not telling everyone about it? Working with me, I am genuine. I am caring. I do care about their lives and their business. So that should be, you should be confident in that in itself.
Okay, we're coming up on time. The last question I have is for viewers, listeners, people that are ingesting all this information. Is there anything else that you want to share with them about you that they may not already know?
Who? Well, I grew up in a really unique family for growing up in Los Angeles. My dad is a bow hunter.
All right.
So I grew up with like very, outdoorsy lifestyle, hence why I'm named Cierra after the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Very
So I think that's something that a lot of people don't know about me is I like girly things, but I also kind of have a tough side to me.
Well, what I can say that I've learned about you is that you're very focused. I think tenacity is an understatement. Like if you have something you want to go and create, you're going to go and do that. But I would say to our listeners and viewers, if you're in Southern California or really anywhere and you're interested in real estate, you are going to be buying or selling real estate, I would absolutely be contacting you and your team. We'll put all of your information, how to contact you at the bottom of of our channel and everything. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
We obviously get the opportunity to work together on a lot of deals, and it's always great. In fact, we're working on a deal now, and we can't wait to get that one
Super
closed.
fun.
Love to
There's a
close
whole
it.
episode coming on that after.
Yes.
That's
Lot
where
to
real
learn.
estate isn't always pretty. You've got to use a lot of minds to figure out how to navigate some transactions.
Absolutely. But thank you so much. It was
thank
great.
you.
Yeah, we'll see you
Thanks
next
for having
time.
me.
All right.